Welcome back to the show. Today on the Rise in Real Estate podcast, we are sitting down with somebody who I consider to be a close friend, a mentor, Mark Kowalik. Mark is an agent at Baird Warner Real Estate, and over a relatively short period of time, he massively scaled his business using one tool: open houses. Mark is really an impressive individual. He's got an awesome backstory, and it just so happens he's an awesome guy. So we're looking forward to diving into this conversation. Throughout, you're going to hear some great tips for not only buyers who are in the market today, but also tips for real estate agents who are looking to grow their business, or maybe who need some guidance on how to better hone their skills at hosting great open houses. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Mark Kowalik.
Welcome back to the Rise in Real Estate podcast. We are cruising through our guest episode, and today really excited to have somebody I consider a mentor for me early in my career, Mark Kowalik, on the show. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks again, guys, for having me. I'm super pumped to be on the podcast.
Of course. This is so for anybody who's coming to the show today. Mark and I both work at Baird Warner and truly have grown our careers in what I would say are drastically different ways with how we approach doing business. So I'm really excited to have a balance to the conversation, to see how you got into what you're doing today, because it's super exciting, and especially the new course you're rolling out. And it'll be exciting to see what you can deliver for not only other people thinking about buying a home, but really for agents who are growing their career. So maybe just backing up, why don't we start from the beginning?
Let's back up to how I first met you, Matt. I remember, when did you get started?
17.
Yeah. I think you were introduced with a managing broker, and then he said, hey, you should have coffee with Mark. He seems like he might need some help. And you said, I'm down for whatever. I mentioned Starbucks. I knew you're going to make it the second I met you. So that's my compliment. Literally, I'm like,
Starbucks philosophy.
he's got the skill set. He's versatile, approachable. And I think that David introduced us thinking that I've had success early on doing open houses. And you're looking at ways to new people when you're getting started. And so it's just cool that you, as we look now, the 5-6 years that have passed, how you went a completely different direction. And I'm still doing the same thing. What you're doing works for you. What I'm doing works for me. And I'm really excited to talk about open houses, how they work on my end. But almost curious to hear your story of how you tried open houses and how it unfolded.
Oh, it's going to be such an interesting conversation, because I won't lie. I am admittedly the biggest open house hater in the world. Honestly, there are two things in the world that make me angry beyond any recognition or reasonable explanation. One is snorkeling. Just scuba dive, okay? Go in the water. Don't swim in the way. Stupid. Nobody should be snorkeling, okay? And two is open houses, because I've just never been able to wrap my mind around. It's like fishing. You sit, you wait, you hope something bites, and maybe you get a client out of it. And you know what? It's probably my approach, so I'm excited to learn how you have made it not like that, right? So I think, and Derek, you've worked with Mark for a long time now. Yep. When you first started working with Mark, what stood out to you most about the way he does business?
So let me backtrack here. This is also a very exciting episode for me too, because you guys were one of the first two people that I met in the industry as well. So to have all three of us together, it's kind of fun, right? Now, the one thing that I will say that sticks out about Mark to me most is especially like his work ethic. Okay. And I don't think I'm doing it a great service by calling it work ethic, because he's a maniac. Okay. Like when I used to live in Lincoln Park and I was out late to maybe 2 or 3 a.m. with my friends, I would go past the office and Mark would be in there working. Right. So
when the bar meets the real world.
Yeah, like, oh, shit, maybe I should probably get into this network too, right? So I think Mark's sheer amount of work that he's willing to do and at the pace that he does it is what I think sticks out to not only be most people that work with him and be professional as well.
Well, where did that come from for you, Mark? You're from Chicagoland?
Yeah, born and raised in the Chicago suburb of Brookfield. Mm-hmm. You guys know the Brookfield Zoo?
Oh, yeah.
That zoo, I live close to it. My folks still live over there. So it's great to always go out there. But my story of kind of how I went from growing up in the city, growing up in the Chicagoland area, and then my adventure to college and how I came back full circle to Chicago which I thought I would never be in Chicago. I thought I'd be a hippie stuck in the mountains.
You Colorado, right? Colorado State.
Colorado State, the Rams. So
Place to leave.
Yeah, no,
it's tough.
Yeah.
But when you have no money and no job,
Gonna come back home.
so I think the cool thing was high school was great, but I wanted the mountains. The mountains were calling me. I did like a summer youth group trip out there one weekend, and I said, my sophomore year, I said, you know what? I got to get my act together, get my grades up, because I want to get into University of Colorado, University of Colorado Boulder is where I toured that school.
Yeah.
I love it. I fell in love with the campus, and that was my target. So
Yeah.
I kind of went hyper-focused on school, make sure I got my grades up. I got into University of Colorado Boulder, and I also got into Colorado State. I just applied to all the Colorado universities around there just as a backup.
Yeah.
And I applied to like one state school. As just like as a backup in case that didn't pan out. I got into CSU and University of Colorado.
Yep.
I never visited CSU. I looked at the price tag of Boulder and I go, oof. CSU is about $15,000 less. I guess I'm going there. Yeah. So I went in there cold, didn't really know anyone.
Is it the school?
Never visited the school. Went there, fell in love with it, made great friends from out of state. We was like the whole out of state crew in the dorms.
Yeah.
And then fast forward my junior year college, after a late night with the buddies, we were watching the movie Road Trip. Have you guys seen Road Trip?
Yeah, it's Tom Green. Tom Green.
Tom Green was a campus tour guide. Okay. If you remember his job, he was just the campus tour guide. They had people tours. This is the cool campus tour guide. 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, I go, dude, that is what I want to do for a job when I'm in college. And I figured out how to get that. In order to get to be a campus tour guide, you need to be like affiliated with a group on campus.
Okay.
I joined a group within my college of natural resources. I was studying tourism hospitality.
Yep.
And then I got the job. It was the best job ever. All I did was talk. For schooling, I was an average student, but I was slow. Like, I'm a slow writer, I'm a slow reader, but when I get talking, man, I could talk all day and night. So I was just learning this campus tour, and I wish they'll pay commission about that, because I don't know how many kids and parents I convinced to go to Colorado State, and
Referral fees. I was thinking of referral fee now, I'm thinking about it.
And the idea was, why I bring that up, because one random night, how I watched the movie, this jump to get the job, because I want to be like, hey, there's Mark on campus when he's giving like a tour of 20 students, walked through the student union, like, it was great. But to pivot from that is, I graduated with hospitality, degree in hospitality. I really wanted to start a small touring company.
Okay.
Pretty much just be stuck in the mountains, like a ski company or whatnot.
I'm doing the biking company here. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happened was, I finished school. I couldn't stay in Colorado. Well, I did a cross-country bike trip. So I was supposed to do an internship and like stay there, but like, when in Rome, we only have one more summer of freedom. My friend and I, we biked across 4,500 miles from the West Coast to the East Coast. It was 81 days. 81 days on the road. We rode for like, I think we took like less than 10 days off.
Wow.
So it was a fun experience, but I came back to Chicago, lived with my folks for 2 years, and I had a job at the Hyatt Hotel. Great experience, but like, I wanted something small business. My dad, my folks came here from Poland. My dad owns a cleaning company. So I saw the idea of like having your own business, having your working hard, and you could see the fruits of your labor. So that really inspired me from a small business. So I hooked up with something that I'm passionate about, is biking, with Bob's Bike Hike in Chicago. They're like the largest bicycle touring and rental company. And I ran that for about like 5-6 years. I learned a lot about how the owner, Jeremy, how he scaled his business through word of mouth, through referrals, and delivering an exceptional service and experience.
Yeah.
So I took that and said, okay, how can I relay that to something that I'm very intrigued by? I love numbers. I love talking. Let's mesh that myriad to real estate. So that's kind of how the story went from my upbringing to where I got.
Where you are now. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. I mean, all the skill set is the same in each position along the way, right? It's just a different application of and a different extension of. But yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, the one company that I think you left out that you did start in college too was, weren't you doing like ticket brokerages as well too? Don't think I forgot about that.
Yes. I thought I was a guy on a Saturday morning who went to the library.
Yeah.
And we had rows of like 20 computers. And I went on Ticketmaster. I mean, one funny story was, it was Saturday morning. Celine Dion was having a concert. Celine Dion,
Like big show.
big show, big money too. So pretty much what I did is I had a credit card. I had multiple credit cards, and I went on ticket buying sprees. I literally took up 50 computers and I just ran down, up, click refresh. My strategy was simple. And this is right when StubHub just was coming around. So it was just eBay. It was eBay, and like I was the early adopter of StubHub. Like this was 07, 08.
Sounds about right.
And one time they literally, like, the cops came and like, "Sir, please step away from the computers." I'm like they thought I was like hacking into the school system because I was running like a maniac to like refresh all the computers.
Here you are just trying to buy Backstreet Boys.
So we just trying to buy Celine Dion. And that was a good run. I pretty much got a bunch of tickets. My strategy was to get close to center stage in the first 3 rows, and I made unbelievable returns on them. So that was my little side hustle.
So Mike's
That's amazing.
Mark's just been hustling since college.
Hey, that's like the flipper mentality, right? You just take something low, add some value, and flip it around. Same that concept.
Now finally a decade something they got smart tickets.
Yeah,
So that was like,
down.
wow, should be worth more.
Hey, it only took a decade. So
There still needs to be some type of like complete altering thing in the tickets.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and I love how Taylor Swift's tickets this year was the one to like be the start,
Oh, absolutely.
because everyone was up.
So it's pretty incredible how quickly you came into finding out what you wanted to do. And I would argue that then once you applied that to real estate, knowing how fast you kind of grew in this career, it was pretty quick to excel there too. So when you started, how did you get started? I mean, it's a pretty big jump to go from running a bicycle company to real estate, and not only real estate, but a successful real estate career.
Yeah.
What was the transition like?
Well, another great story. I was just getting married. I got married in September of 2015, and I started I went full tilt into real estate July of 2015. So I pretty much was getting married without a job, without an income. A little bit of a pressure and going into that. And my wife said, Brittany, she goes, "Mark, you have 6 months to figure out this hobby of yours. You can't figure out this hobby.
It's rough.
You got to figure out something else that's going to bring in some money." No joke. So I had no money. We had no money when I got into real estate. And the idea was, a lot of people have the mindset that, like, once you get into real estate, your family and friends push them hard to get the business from you. What I've identified is, like, your family and friends, they love you. They don't trust you in this profession because you don't have the experience just yet.
Right.
Right? Like, your cousin says, "Matt, I love you. You're a great person. You just got your license 4 days ago, and I want to buy a $700,000 house." I'm a little hesitant that negotiating ability to navigate that.
Right.
So I had a ticking clock there you go, of 6 months. And I said, okay, I start dabbling with my family and friends. They're like, "Oh, that's so great. I'm so happy for you."
Yeah.
They're not going to send me leads right away.
Not happy enough to buy $1 million house.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like you, Mark, but I don't like you enough to
Right.
trust you to give you either a referral or help navigate my purchase or sell my home. And so I said, okay, if my sphere doesn't trust me now, what's the best way to get in front of people? And they don't know my story. They don't know how long I've been there. But if I exude confidence, if I exude if I'm relatable,
Right.
approachable, likable, I I could win their trust in a very short period of time. So my aha moment was open houses. It doesn't cost anything to do them other than your time. And so I went all in onto open houses. Like, no joke, you probably saw me on that Saturday at 2 a.m. Like, I was prepping on a Friday for like 4 open houses, sometimes 5 that I was doing the weekend.
Right.
So I did 2 on Saturday back to back with a 1-hour gap, and then maybe 3 if I could squeeze it on Sunday. And I was doing that every single weekend. My idea was I didn't care where it was happening. I was so focused on gaining confidence and knowledge about the marketplace of different neighborhoods in the shortest period of time. Yeah. So just thinking, if I was Rogers Park, if I was in Lincoln Park, if I was in the South Loop, I didn't care what the price point was. When I went into prepping for the open house, I spent an hour looking at, we have this data thing called InfoSpark, which is graphs so you can filter 1, 2, 3 beds, no matter what it is. And if I was doing an open house for just 2 beds, I wasn't just looking at 2 beds. I was looking at what are 1 beds performing, what are 3 beds performing, what are condos compared to single family homes. And I was just soaking that all up. So when I met someone randomly on the street or at a party, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking at, Roscoe Village. Boom, that came to mind. I did an open house a couple weeks back. I have in a general sense, I was like the politician. You don't know things specifically. You just talk vaguely. But 2 bedrooms are like 400-ish. That was a lot. A little bit a lot. Is that it? And that was the approach. So I went all in on that, and I convinced strangers to work with me. They knew me for what I was for those 2 minutes, as approachable, likable, confident, knowledgeable. I won their trust. And once I started getting them into homes, my clients into homes, I started posting about it on social media. Like, hey, I've sold this. Not like, hear me looking at new, but it's more like, here are the results. Here are the results. Yeah. And that was my marketing to my sphere. Of like, all of a sudden, 6 months later, a year later, like, oh, Mark, he's going to make it in real estate. I feel confident to work with him now. And then that's kind of when it spiraled. But the 6-month clock that my wife gave me, I got nothing for 5 months. Nothing. Maybe a rental or 2. Like that. Nothing to pay the bills long term. 5 months in, someone goes into my open house that I was hosting. He lives like 2 houses down. It was like a townhome complex. And he walks in, he goes, man, my place is outdated. This thing is moving ready. Like, can I just buy this? I'm like, yeah, of course. No, Joe, you worked this deal. You helped me with others, not Harry. I literally went into, I said, let's meet up an hour later at the office. And I literally ran to the office. I'm like, dude, I didn't put a contract together. Don't do it. And it's just like, if I want to figure it out, like, looking on the fly, I learned a lot, and I train now. I have a couple of teammates, and I train. I love to help with new agents, but I tell that story because it's like the only way to get paid in real estate is through a contract. Yeah. So I was 5 months to like working hard, but not focusing on how to write a contract. When someone just slap in the face says, I want to buy this house.
And we see some crazy bad contract. It's fill in the blank. How many things could you mess up?
Yeah.
It's off. They mess it up.
It's bad. I'm at the point now where I really don't like handwritten contracts. Yeah.
I'm like, type that thing out. Unless you have good penmanship, right? Like some of these attorneys and some of the agents that drafted up, it looks like I did it with my left hand.
But that's like, I think you see these stats about how many people quit in real estate. I truly believe that most anybody can succeed in this business if they stick with it long enough and if they stick to a plan consistently. Yeah. And I think for you, that plan, the consistency was there. It was just time. It took 5 months to work. Once it worked, now you haven't looked back, I think a lot of us can relate that made it through that hump. And I think there's probably a lot of people who walked away too early because they didn't make it over that hump. Like they just didn't stick long enough. Yeah. So it's hard though, especially in the beginning when you have no dollars.
Yeah, money, you're working with nothing to show for it. I mean, that's not an uncommon story in the industry, right?
It's you come home, your wife says, "Hey, how was your day?" AKA, how was mine, Jimmy?
Yeah,
nothing.
Another
month goes by, nothing. But yeah, I think Matt, you said is like, how many people leave the industry and they're so close.
Right.
And once I had that sale, all of a sudden, that gave me more confidence.
Right.
Confidence led to more success in the open house. And then all of a sudden, I literally like 2 months later, I had one open house and I got like 5 clients out of one open house. And I think Brittany was there helping me out. So I think I need some, that's a great turnover rate.
I used to come and do a couple of them. Yeah, I'd like let people in at the doors and stuff like that.
You were just the follower.
Just like, get going.
Just come on.
How many bedrooms in this
That's
thing?
right.
I'm just the muscle here. You gotta go talk to Mark upstairs.
So I appreciate you.
And I can't speak to this. He still does them because not more than 45 minutes ago, I did an open house flyer for Mark.
Yeah. So I
up in that.
I still believe in it. It is a great way. I look at it as now it's just a bucket of my business. It wasn't my only source of revenue through my business when it first started, but I still use that. And for example, I had a listing in the West Loop last month. I did 4 open houses there, 2 weekends, Saturday and Sunday, back-to-back weekends. I got 3, possibly 4 active buyers out of it. Like when I say active, it's like we've gone to showings. And at that point, if you built a rapport that you get up to a showing, like if you can't see that through, then like there's something wrong with you got to look more under your hood to figure that why can't you convert that? But it's more of like getting into the showing. That's when you can build a rapport, the one-on-one or FaceTime, and more importantly, just listening to that, right? Like it's not rocket science, but like the biggest thing is creating a connection and listening to what they want, and not setting up on a canned search that says here's 45 properties, and they're 5 bedrooms, and I can only afford a 2-bedroom. You just annoy them. So it's very specific, listen, asking those important open-ended questions that you can really pick apart what they're looking for to help them say, giving you rolling out the carpet. This is the home that you want.
Yeah.
Are you interested? Yes or no?
So then what makes your open houses different from anyone else's? Because like open houses aren't uncommon. People do them all the time. There's hundreds of them.
Yeah.
So like, what are you doing different or special that's allowing you to convert some of these?
Well, and I would actually say before we even say that, I would say it's important for people to know when you walk into an open house, a few things. Number one, oftentimes the person sitting there is not the listing. So people immediately put their arms up in defense, like, I shouldn't talk to this person. Oftentimes they're not the person who's listed the home. They're just sitting in the house to meet you when you walk through the door. So there is this nature of open houses, which is sort of two-sided. Number one is how you conduct an open house as a professional, as a representation of the seller and the seller's agent, assuming that's not you, because obviously you do sit your own open houses sometimes. The second part of that is your representation for a potential buyer that walks in that doesn't already have a buyer's agent. And in some cases, rare, but some cases you can actually represent both. You can be representing the seller in your listing. Buyer walks in like the neighbor that says, I want to write an offer. And you can legally in Illinois represent both sides. So I think it's important for people listening to understand that when we're talking about representing open houses and meeting clients, it's not a conflict of interest to sit in an open house and meet a buyer, because most times you're at that house specifically to meet buyers. That's the marketing strategy behind the open house, separate of the obvious goal, which is gain exposure and sell the home itself. So I just want to make that clear to everyone before you explain, why what you do is so much different than how everybody else does it.
Yeah. No, Matt, you explained it perfectly, because it is very confusing, especially the consumer, where they're like, they don't know how it operates.
Right.
You said it perfectly. You're either the listing agent, and your goal there, the seller has entrusted you to give exposure to that listing to get as many bodies through. You only need one to connect to sell a home. But your fiduciary responsibility is, and the way I operate my listing is, I'm not a dual agent. That's one thing that I just.
So you would hand it off. When somebody comes in and says, Mark, I want to hand you this bag of cash for this house. For like, hey, I represent the seller. Come to my, counterpart.
Exactly. Come to my teammates. Say, listen, I'm here, the listing agent. If it's my listing, I will say that. Say, I'm the listing agent. I'm the expert on this property here.
Right.
If you want to write an offer, reach out to my colleague. I have the responsibility to the seller. So don't tell me what you want to do with the property, because I can't respond to it. I'm only talking to the seller. Now, reversing that, if the strategy, if you're a new agent, is to get exposure to the buyers, if someone is entering a open house, the mindset is, I'm intrigued, interested in potentially buying a house in probably in a year. It could be as long as a year or so, but sometimes it's like, I'm looking to buy a home in the next month, 2, 3, this.
Because, I have a client going to open house tomorrow, right? Because we did showings today, but she's like, oh, I'll go on Saturday. There's an open house. So you do get the people who are like, I want to buy right now, and I came here to see this. You're right. You also get the, we were walking back from the gym. We've always learned to live in this neighborhood. We rent up the street, and we saw your signs, right? And there's like a huge spectrum of who walks up.
How many times do you get the nosy neighbor?
Every open house.
But here's the thing. It's the mindset of like that nosy neighbor also means they're probably an owner.
Yeah.
So like sometimes you're like, nosy neighbor, like I mean, or then I'm like, I'm all in.
Hey,
what's your story? Why do you like the building? What floor are you at? Like sometimes it's a little bit hard to go like, what floor? What's your unit number? But like then they, the idea is how hard are you willing to work to try to convert that potential person down the road?
Right.
I need someone who's a nosy neighbor. They always say, listen, I'm not looking to buy. I'm just a nosy neighbor.
They know they're wasting your time in the context of that opportunity. They're not buying their neighbor.
Here for lunch. We're interested in what I'm going to do.
I'm trying to see what updates it did. I'm looking to maybe update my kitchen, and I treat it as a genuine approach to say, what do you like about the building?
Right.
What unit are you, or what floor are you on? How are your views? If they sign in, like their information, if they're an owner, it's public knowledge. So like, if you want to dig for that, you can look them up. And then you could, like, one thing that I do is I reverse it and say, hey, listen, Derek, who lives on the 7th floor, thanks for coming to my open house. You know what? Did you know your home is worth? And I send a seller's net sheet. So I literally said, like, thanks for coming to my open house. Your home, if you told me you didn't have updates, you could sell for this. You want to know how much equity you're sitting on? Here are all the costs. Here's that. That is value added. One of the things that I try to do is provide a value, not spam people.
Right.
And that is a long play that I put it on I'm doing like a monthly newsletter for that seller. Is my monthly newsletter has a bunch of data. It is like 90% data, stats in the neighborhood. So if I see someone opening it and I look at my follow-ups 6 months later, they open everything, they're engaged. And that's someone just hitting them at the right time whenever they're ready. But to take a step back to say, what's the approach to the open houses? I broke it down into like 4 pillars. And so I'm really excited to because it used to be all over the place. Everyone used to ask where I used to do presentations like, what's your formula to success? How are you able to convert open house buyers that come through? And I'm not. The first thing to tell people, especially a new agent who's doing it, you're doing this for yourself, your benefit. The list agent loves you because they don't physically need to be at that open house, and they can open up to either help with showings for other buyers.
Bingo.
Take the weekend off, a nice sunny summer Chicago weekend, Saturday. But you're there, and we're super grateful for that. They look like a hero to the seller because they say, hey, listen, we got an open house Saturday and Sunday. Unfortunately, I can't come there, but a colleague of mine that I trust will do the best to represent your property. That is how it works. If you are a new agent or an agent trying to sit open houses, you're there to help the listing agent out. But the mindset changes is if you're there to just be the person that just opens the door and says, hey, thanks for coming to my open house. Here's a 3-bed, 2-bath. I'm going to be in the kitchen. Let me know if you have any questions.
Please.
You're literally just helping the listing agent out to help bodies through there and get exposure to the unit. The time, effort, energy you invested, it's a waste of your time. You don't create any connections. Some buyers that come in are represented by another buyer's agent. So that's
Might even be with them.
They might be with them too.
Yeah.
So the approach is you don't want to step on any toes. If someone is working with a buyer's agent, I wouldn't go after them. And I try to gauge, are they working with someone? It's like, hey, listen.
Yeah, accidents happen, but I know you well enough to know that if somebody's saying they're represented, you're not following up with them to, try and sway them a different direction.
And here's the thing. There's certain things like tips that I found. And if someone is asking a lot of questions for you, like, hey, listen, tell me more about this. I say, hey, by the way, is your agent going through this information, these stats? Because they look like they're hungry. And I'll go into how I have my setup at the open house. If I ask them, like, hey, are you working with an agent? Like, yeah.
Everybody says yes.
Great. What's their name? And they're always like, honey, what's the name? What package are they with? I think, they're not willing. If they're working with an agent, that agent hasn't done a good enough job to build a rapport for them to know what's their name, what's the broker shit. So for me, that's an opportunity of they're not getting the value. I don't look at stepping on their toes. It's more of I'm not forcing you to work with me, right? I don't sign buyer's agreements.
Right.
That is something of if you want to fire me, you could fire me, never respond to any of my phone calls or texts or emails. That's all good. That is on me for not giving you the value. But I didn't look at it that vice versa. It's that buyer's agent isn't giving the value. If they're intrigued and engaged with me and they keep listening, I want to keep giving it to them.
Yeah.
So that's not, I don't look at that stepping on your toes. If someone's like, I'm working with Matt at Baird Warner, great. What's Matt's info so I can follow up to see if you're interested, so I can give that follow-up to the listing agent to say, hey.
It's a busy job. You're working both angles because you do need to know. It's an odd world, but I don't like hosting open houses. Doesn't mean I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
When you sat there, you have to reflect the information of the seller, and you want to know as much as possible so you don't sound like an idiot to the buyers coming through, and you don't want to look bad for the person you're representing, which is the list agent. But you're also in this mix of my mindset is not on that. I need to know that. That's the borderline to be here. But if I'm focused on you, you're coming to me as a potential buyer. I'm really just trying to sift through whatever information and probably whatever first line of defense, yes, I have an agent excuse you're going to give me to see if there's an actual business opportunity there.
Yeah.
And that's really where you're excelling, is focusing your energy less on wasted time and knowing everything about the listing and more on getting to know the actual individuals coming through to see that listing and what is their motivation and objective of being there.
You spot on. It's like my days of working at the front desk at my hotel. It gets busy, right? You get everyone coming in off the airplane and they're checking in. How can you acknowledge that person at the back of the line to be like, I see you, I hear you. You look like you're getting frustrated because you have a question.
We'll be there.
But I'm still talking to the person that is trying to sign in. I use the same approach for open houses. So your goal, if you're not a listing agent and you're trying to connect with buyers to turn into your clients to help them you want to become their buyer's agent, I look at this. Let's say 10 parties come through, okay? Derek and I are having a great conversation. You're telling me about all the things that we're relating, and we have so much in common. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, people come through. I'm not ignoring them because I'm still representing the best interests of the sellers that I'm not turning my back to them, but I want to acknowledge them and say, hey guys, here's the deal. I got a whole spec sheet over here. Quick rundown, 15-second, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Updates happen here. Let me know. I would recommend checking out the bedroom room. Sweet, double vanity. I'll be hanging out over here. Let me know if you have any questions.
Right.
There, you now acknowledge the 9 other parties without stopping my conversation with Derek. Yeah. So if they want more, they will come back and say, I'm open and receptive to listening, and I will read the body language and say, Mark, I know you're in this conversation, but I might have a follow-up question. You have to read the room like a concierge. So the listing agent is in the best light. The sellers are getting their whatever their story is about the property, but I'm not ignoring my conversation with Derek because that is most likely who I'm building rapport with, who I'm creating the connection that is going to want to continue talking to me.
Right.
So my 4 pillars, I've dumbed it down into these easy things. 1, setting up for success. It starts with, how are you approaching the open house? And this is without even talking about the property, I go into InfoSparks. So I have graphs printed out, and I leave normally on a kitchen counter that have the supply, what's the inventory looking like, what's the price points for 2 bedrooms, what are some comps, and I have it laid out there. And typically, if someone is buying, let's say a couple, one person is more emotionally inclined about the property. They like the views, the features of the kitchen. And then let's say the other person is more analytical. I just found that in couples that one person rides the analytical wave, the other person rides the emotional. I can see myself making this at home. Your goal is to connect with both of them. So when I connect with the analytical people, I have graphs.
Yeah.
It's just visually appealing. They're like, what is this? They just naturally gravitate. That is how you can build confidence, rapport. I'm an analytical person. We connect and let's continue talking. How do you connect with a person who's more emotional? You're asking those open-ended questions. Hey, what do you like about this? So setting up for the open house, having the graphs printed out. I'm really big into Zenlist. If you guys don't have Zenlist, it is a phenomenal real estate app that has the biggest value add, as you could see, off-market, upcoming private listings coming on, and they aggregate it into nice, super user-friendly experience. I really try pushing that because it allows for me to create that instant connection with them. I have their contact information. I could see what they're helping, see what they're looking at. You can create that like Facebook Messenger experience where it's just more like a chat. Setting up for success that's one part to get ready for the open house. The other part is like, how do you actually do it? I'm an open house sign bandit. I have a minimum of like 8 signs that I do. Like some people do like 1, 2 signs. The goal is to get the random people who are going to Starbucks to be like, oh, honey, let's go check. Oh, let's go look at that. Oh, that's so cute. Let's go check that out.
Yeah.
Those are the people who are intrigued, not looking today, but maybe looking in like 6 months. So the more signs I have, the more I have success with getting random people who are not represented by an agent, that their buyer's agent sent them to an open house because they weren't available, but they randomly went there. And my open house signs is pretty strategic, but super simple. The worst thing to do at an open house sign, if you're a new agent, you go to your brokerage, they give you a big sign, it just says brokerage with a random phone number that's not even your phone number with an arrow.
Yeah.
And then you plop it there, and no one knows how to get into the property, and they just have an arrow pointing to the building. I see that like every time I drive on the weekend, I'm like, dude, you're just wasting your time. You invested all this energy to try to set up for success, try to convert some people. People don't know how to get into your...
Or I love when I see the agent park in front, pull out one sign that says door open, and then walk right in.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. You did a lot of prep work.
Hey, open house is really slow. Like, yeah, because people can't get in there. So I do like a one side of it has like a 7-page, 7-photo flyer of it.
Yeah.
And so people could visually see it. The other one has a QR code so they get to scan it. And then the other one is like my phone number, how to call me or text me to get into the property. So I put that out there and I get people in there. The second pillar that I have is like creating connections. So the idea is, how can you get someone into the house without like blowing them up? Be like, hey, cited right away. Thanks for coming. Blah, 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 and like they get overwhelmed. Or like they're like, oh, I'm going to send you my spam phone number or spam email. You're like every other person who just asks for my contact information right away and just won't stop talking, kind of all up under my face. So my approach is give them some space, build a rapport, let them linger to a section of the house. Ask, hey, what did you like about the master bedroom? Is it large enough? You're trying to identify their must-haves and what I call the must-haves and the perks. That is the buyer's presentation in a nutshell. If you have the buyer, what are the top 5 things that are important to them, and what are the like perks I would like to have but not important, you've done the buyer's presentation. You don't have to sit down for 30 minutes. You have that. You can work on follow-ups off of that. Mm-hmm. But it's important because you're listening to them.
Right.
You're understanding what they're looking for so you can get value, follow up with them, specifically what they want. So the second pillar is creating those connections. You're trying to build a rapport through that. The third pillar is asking for the second date. So what I've learned and what I've trained a lot of agents is do all this groundwork. You set up for success. You have all the signs out there. You're creating the connection. And here's what happens. Derek, really great connecting with you. Thanks again for coming by. I really appreciate it. We'll be in touch. Yeah. You respond, yeah, thanks again, Mark. See it. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks again for all the info. They close the door and you're like, now I got to follow up with them, right? Now I got to do this follow up. And the thing that you haven't identified is where do they stand where are they in that process? So I look at it as a second date is you're trying to close the deal right then and there. So for example, instead of we built a rapport, we were talking, we're being acid, we created this connection. So now it's more like, hey, Derek, really great connecting with you. I'm going to send you a Zealous app. I know what you're looking for. You only want penthouses in River North. I think I saw one when I was going through preparing for open houses. I'm going to send that to you. Are you cool if we meet up this afternoon? It sounds like you're around the neighborhood. Can we go through maybe a couple of these penthouses to see if any of them hit what you're looking for?
Yep.
And your response saying no. All good, no worries. I'll still send it to you. I'll shoot you a text of them and just let me know your thoughts. So the good thing about asking for that second date is now I know where Derek stands. He just flat out said it. No, like,
It's like, yeah.
I'm good right now. Thanks, but no thanks.
Yep.
So you can work the last pillar is now your follow-up strategy. He said no. I asked for that appointment and he said no. It's not a no forever. It's more like, no, I'm not interested right now. If you give enough value over time, that no might turn into, Mark, this penthouse looks pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Great. When do you want to see it? Tonight? Sweet. There you go. That is that appointment. Once you get them once you show a property with them, I look at it as like, either they're going to at that point, the deal is set to you should be able to close that deal if they want to really buy a place. If they don't want to or it shakes out, at least you have a client. I look at a client for life. They don't want to buy this year, great. Next year, great. Third year, we're going to work together until you decide to buy.
They're going to buy a house.
All right.
Are you going to?
So that's the mindset of asking for the second date lets you identify your follow-up strategy of where they are in the process. If someone's like, Mark, not right now, but X. So that means flat out no. No one has ever said Mark, I hate you. Never contact me. Never contact me again. And some people are just super cold, and that might not be the right person for me. When you're starting as an agent and you have a lot of time, you can really think about your follow-up strategy and whatnot. When I'm doing the open houses, I'm still doing the open houses. That is a part of my bucket of business. But my goal is I see one client from an open house. If I did 2 open houses a weekend, I get 2 clients a weekend. That's pretty good. So if I have 10 bodies come through and someone's flat out no, Mark, I might not invest a lot of my time and effort into following up with them. If someone's like, Mark, it was really awesome connecting with you, but we need 2 weeks because we're trying to figure out this work transition. Great. They said, reach out to me in 2 weeks.
Right.
And now I know instead of doing a drip campaign of where they are and trying to add value with it, I'm going to follow up in 2 weeks. When we are ready, because I know where they stand because I asked for that second date.
Right. Yeah.
So my last pillar is the follow-up process. So I have a drip campaign. It's not overcomplicated, but it's more of how can I add value over time through either text, through Zenlist, through the app, off-market private properties, and then through data through my monthly newsletter.
Right.
So if people over time, if I'm looking at it, they're not looking at any of my stuff or responding to it, after a couple weeks, I just say, they don't like me. That's cool. And let them go.
Off to the next one.
Yeah.
I think where follow-up is where most... For sure. I think that's probably the hardest part, right? It's the prep and the follow-up. I mean, how do you spend your intention there? That probably comes with practice, which most people just need more of. But the prep and the follow-up, you do control. And that's just effort and going through the action cycles. I'm curious. I mean, obviously, we've given the context now. You've been doing this for a long time. What's the results? I mean, what has this done for your business last year? How many clients were you able to close using open house? I
ran stats from since I started. So this is when I got started, my first open house lead of 2015 to now. I've closed, since I started real estate, I've closed over $100 million of transactions. About just under 30 billion came from open house connection. Either directly, I met you at open house, or I met them at open house, then they decided to sell, buy another place, or they referred someone. So, almost a third of my business came from open houses.
So, I mean, if you're thinking about starting in real estate and you need a bucket to invest time in, I mean, there you go. Out of 100 million, 30 million of it, that's pretty easy math, right?
Yeah.
Particularly because I would agree with you. I think when you're starting where most people can get into open houses is it's free. You don't have to put it, I mean, other than gas, I guess, just to get there. But that's the hardest thing. It's your time. For me, time is the exchange. You nailed it right on the head. The trade-off for me is, for my listings, I hire people to do the open houses. By hire, I mean I just let the agents go. I'm not paying them. But they come and they do the open houses for me because my time for me on the weekends is better spent taking out buyers, talking with clients, doing personal stuff like being home or being with friends who eventually become clients anyway, than it is sitting at the open houses. Now, that's not always true. This year, things have slowed down on some weekends, so I'm back in the mindset of, okay, I could do an open house again. It's all about how you approach it, being in the right mindset, how you follow up. But it doesn't, I think what most people forget is, and actually where you and I could probably relate, is open house leads are no different to me than how I meet people through social media.
Yeah.
You connect, you have a warm introduction, now you're through that phase. They like you, they want to work with you, but it's your ability to follow up with them, to make that connection real, and to continue to be relevant when the decision-making time comes. And that's the hard part, right? And it's really all about just sticking to it.
Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to mention about Derek is, especially at the beginning, where we were like one of the first to do these property flyers. The biggest thing is like what Derek does great. For all my open houses, he puts together the sheet that pretty much says, if you bought this home at this list price, here's a breakdown. What every buyer, the simplest things want to know was, what is my monthly all in?
Yeah. What is the cost?
Right? If I puts together at like 5, 10, 15, 20% down. So when you're at the open house and someone's like, oh, my rent is $3,000 a month. And I asked like, hey, do you have an idea what you plan on putting down? I have no idea. Well, here you go. Let's look at this graph. If you put $50,000 down, and you look at the all in, you pretty much be at the same price right now where you're paying for rent.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I either have to save that much or I'm doing pretty well with where I'm at. So that was super helpful, especially in the beginning when I was trying to create value, and now they're more relevant. But in 2015, 2016, these property flyer breakdowns, like you had like,
well, now rates are fluctuating. I mean, hell, you could tour an open house last weekend and then go to one this weekend, and the difference is going to be noticeable in the interest rate, right? So it's important.
I mean, the open house resources, I always think are pretty important, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're just going to be there and just sit there and just open up the door, what are you doing?
Value at everything, right? How are you delivering value? Even when you're sitting in an open house for a couple hours, literally sitting, like, how are you delivering value to the person you're representing, maybe the seller? How are you representing the buyer? That's the whole spin on it. So I'm curious, where does this go? And maybe where we can take this to kind of wrap it up for our episode would be, what would you advise anybody who's trying to get in this do? You obviously have a system now, and I know that you're doing, I guess I would call it seminars or coaching seminars on this that are available for new agents to come and to join and to learn from you. That's awesome. And we're going to make sure we'll link in the show notes access so that you can get in touch with Mark if you want to participate in that. Somebody's walking in right now. They're like, I want to do the Mark Kowalik system. I get the 4 buckets. Where would you start? Like, they're sitting in the office today and they want to start planning next weekend.
So here's the best advice. If you want to get into open houses, the most important thing you need to do is build confidence. The only way to build confidence is through knowledge and data, understanding the neighborhood. So instead of spending your time, you're a big social media guy, instead of spending your time, I learned the complete opposite. It's easy to do the social media when you're in the beginning phases, like, oh, look,
so many times.
Like this, look at me, I have this pretty looking listing. I'm so amazing. This $1 million listing, you should work with me. But I still agree that if you don't have success and people are seeing that $1 million listing, like, okay, but instead of spending that time, because it's easy, it's fun, you invest it, and I look at it as building the knowledge, doing the info sparks, understanding different neighborhoods. That's going to pay huge dividends, because then when you meet someone at a random open house and they're just there because they thought it was a pretty looking unit, but they're really looking at the Gold Coast,
right?
You could spin off, Gold Coast, 2 bedrooms, 2 bath, to say your expectations are around $450, you build instant credibility like that. And so that is where you should spend your effort and energy, is understanding, and don't get so narrow-minded like, I want to be a X neighborhood agent.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you got
Know
to
everything.
know everything, because it'll help paint the picture. So you have the confidence, and when you meet someone, instantly build a rapport with that, because they trust you, because you seem confident. You exude this knowledge of data.
I think you couldn't, nailed it on the head. I actually think about this a lot with Derek. I really appreciate, for anybody who's ever worked with Derek, his approach to how he handles business is, the data, you don't put it in somebody's face. You present a very approachable, upfront, but I know in the background you've got everything locked. I think Mark and I lean data heavy. I'm going to shove data and graphs down your throat. But that's because I step out your brain. But Derek is on balance.
He's the top 3 to tour guide. As a tour guide, your goal was to create a good story that's digestible.
Right.
People would overwhelm the lending side when you're like, I bet if you're on the phone and you're like, hey guys, your principal interest this, and it goes up the interest rate. You want to buy down points, and you lose them. But you gotta need to narrate the story of
But if you make it easy and you know why, and that's what I would recommend for all agents, and what Mark just said perfectly is, whether you use it or not, you need to know your shit.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
You gotta start with a basis of understanding. And I think where our industry got too far away from was, it got really easy to sell a house without knowing anything about it.
Yep.
And now we're getting back to the point where it's not, and we're seeing it. That's why deals are ugly. That's why contracts aren't filled out the right way. It's because people have moved away from the fundamentals of, we are professionals. We're supposed to be the industry leaders in this. And so when you say, I take time to learn the stats of the neighborhood, that's exactly how it's supposed to be, right? And when I get on social media and I talk, I can make those videos because, frankly, I know what the fuck I'm talking about, right? It took years to get the experience before I could stand there on a platform and say that to the world. And I think with you, it's the same thing with open houses, right? You weren't talking about open house success until it fed the growth through your business. Now to the point where you can disseminate knowledge, right? So for any agent out there, if you're looking to get started and you want to work with Mark in particular on refining your open house game, we'll make sure that you have that contact information. I think if you take anything away from today, start with the data, start by putting in the hours, and remember that your time, particularly when you don't have the resources otherwise to spend, is something you can always dedicate to getting better. So time is a valuable thing. I think that's a great place to end this. You got anything else for us today, Derek?
Like I said at the beginning, I was highly excited for this one. I think it lived up to expectations.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to be on.
We're going to have to do a part 2. We'll see all of your scenes. What's
Derek and Sierra song. Yeah, song.
That's amazing. So, Mark, thank you for making time.
Thank you guys.
Man.
We'll talk to you soon.
Stuff.